Shanonoa Augustfalcha. Did I get that right, Tom? Shanonoa Augustfalcha. Good evening and welcome to the Irish Cultural Center of the Mohawk Valley. Before we get going here with our program tonight, I want to tell you about some things we have coming up here in the next few weeks. Next Wednesday, November 3rd, down in the pub, there's a traditional Irish session. Anybody is welcome to join, as long as you can, play one of these instruments up here: fiddle, flute, tin whistle, banjo.
Or if you've
Well, maybe we don't need another. I don't know.
Or if you've got a song.
There's always room for one.
There's always room for another banjo. Accordion players, we do need accordion players. So, but anyway, come and listen or come and join in. It starts at 7 o'clock next Wednesday night, November 3rd. On Thursday, November 18th at 7:30, it'll be up in this space, Soldier's Joy. Bill Fahy and Amanda Straney doing songs and stories from the Civil War.
It's a really, really good show.
It's a
You
great show.
don't want to miss this show.
Oh, it is a good show.
Just ask Bill.
I'll tell you.
And then this is very exciting. On Friday, December the 3rd at 7 p.m., down in the event center, we are having the Irish all-women's group, Cherish the Ladies. I don't know how many of you folks have ever heard of Cherish the Ladies, but they're a world-class female Irish band, and they will be doing their Christmas show. So they will have 7 musicians, a couple of dancers, featuring singer Kathy Ryan.
Oh, some of the best in the world.
Some of the best talent you ever see anywhere, anywhere in the world. So that's it for through December. I think right now, probably have a few more events.
Paint and sip.
Oh, Paint and Sip event, yes, that is on December the 8th, which is a Wednesday night. So look for that in the newsletters. It should be, well, the Eventbrite probably will not have the Paint and Sip, but there will be something about it in the newsletter, and you'll see postings on Facebook and things like that for it. Just a quick question: how many of you folks signed up on Eventbrite? And how many people received confirmation emails? Okay, you did. I know somebody over here didn't, and you did too. Great. Okay. Because there was a few people that didn't receive their confirmation. I will be looking into that and see what's happened to that in the future. But they usually send out one right away. So we'll make sure that that's not a problem in the future. Okay, so, and if you didn't get your 50/50 tickets or your door prize ticket, see Colleen up here at the front before the end of the show here, before you leave. They're going to come and get money from you.
No, this is a good deal.
No, this is for the raffle tickets and stuff. That's all. They're going to give you money, maybe. All right. So, anyways, all the proceeds go to support future programs such as this, and to support our museum, which right now really doesn't look like much of a museum, but.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will. We do have a library started here.
Yeah. Currently, we're the museum pieces.
Yeah, we're the artifacts, right?
Yes, we are. No doubt.
Okay, so tonight we have with us, well, I'll let you introduce us.
Very good. So let's start with the tune. Good evening and welcome. In this, the darkening time of year, Samhain arrives to herald autumn down its slide into winter. Tonight, we present stories collected in 19th century rural Ireland. Stories from a time when science wasn't so sure of itself. Stories of banshees and fiends, musical fairies, not the nice kind. And of course, ghosts. We endeavor here this evening to embrace the dark and shorten the night. Our reader musicians are Tavia Hach on fiddle and harp, Mike Hoke, who you've heard from already, on fiddle, Bill Fahy on banjo and guitar, and I'm Mike Carroll. And our first story asks if any of us has this good a friend. So,
It's called The Grave of His Fathers. There was a lad in Ventry Parish once, and he could not make a living in the place where he was. So he said to himself that he would travel to the north of Ireland, and maybe he would find something to do there, and would bring a bite of food to his mouth. So he set out with a friend from the same parish, and they walked Ireland till they came to the north. And there they took service with a farmer, and were doing well for a time. But after a time, the lad fell sick, and he called to his friend and said, "I know that I'm going to die." "Don't say that," said his friend. "I do say that, for young or old, when the day comes, we must go. But I always thought, when I came to die, to be buried in my own churchyard among my kindred, and now I'm dying a long way from home. But promise me this much, that when I am dead, you will cut the head off me, and take that and bury it in my own churchyard." His friend was unwilling at first, but at the last he gave the promise, and the lad died happy, for he knew some part of him would rest in his own churchyard. So when he died, his friend was true to his word, and he cut the head from him and started throughout Ireland with the head wrapped in a cloth. Can't hear me back there?
oh no.
Well, you all have to move up. And at last he came to Ventry Parish. Weary with walking, he turned into the house of his friend, and he put the cloth with the head in it on a table. And he told them that it was their son's head, that he had died in the north, and that he had wished that his head be buried in his own churchyard, since his body could not rest there. And they got in a coffin, a barrel of porter, and some tobacco pipes, and had a wake on the head. The next day they started for Ventry Churchyard with the head in the coffin. You know that Ventry Churchyard is in a place where two roads meet. Now as they came down their road, they saw another funeral coming down the other road. Now in Ireland it is the custom, when two funerals are coming to the same churchyard at the same time, for them to race together, so that one that wins will be the first to bury their dead. So they made all speed down the road, and the other funeral hastened down the other road. And they came together in the same moment to the wall of the churchyard. And as they touched the wall, the other funeral, the coffin and the bearers, all vanished as though the earth had swallowed it. They wondered at this, but they said they had come to bury the head, so they would bury the head. So they lifted the coffin over the wall and came to the place where the grave was open. There they buried the head as the young man asked when he was dying. And so it was for a time. But after some months, another man in the family died, and they opened the grave again. And what should they find there? But two coffins. In one coffin the head, and in the other the body. So that in the end, the lad had his wish and rested, head and body, all in the grave of his fathers.
And in our following story, you may find out that in some days it's best to miss the boat.
A fisherman must follow the sea, and how can a man escape the day of his death? There is such and such a time marked out for a man on this earth. And when his day is come, if he went into an ant's hole, death would find him there. We have only our time, and young or old, a man must go when he is called. There was boat going out to Inish Tuishkart, once to fish from the rocks, and when they were halfway there, they found they had left the mast behind. So they went back for the mast. And there was a man on the slip who was the best man on the island at fishing from the rocks. For at every craft there is one man is better than all the others, if it were only at driving nails with a hammer. They set out again, taking this man with them. And when they came to Inish Tuishkart, they went about the island, putting one man out on a rock here and another there, till at last they were all in their places fishing. After they had been thus for a time, the day began to rise on them, and the boat went again to pick up the men. But when they had come to the rock where they had put this man, he was not to be found. A wave had come up out of the sea, they said, and taken him. For death wanted him, and his day was come. And when they went back at the beginning of the day, it was not for the mast they went, as they thought, but for the man. No man goes beyond his day.
reminds us that it's okay to leave your baby with a stranger.
The cattle jobber of Anascowell. There was a cattle jobber once who was going to a fair near Anascowell, and he met the good people, fairies, about nightfall on the way. They took him with them and turned from the road into a lonely field in which was a large fairy fort. When they went in, he saw a house as grand as he had ever put foot in. The company ate and drank enough, and the good people pressed him to sit at the table, but he would neither taste food nor drink. Next morning after breakfast they went out, leaving no one behind but the piper, whose name was Tim. "You are not to let that man out of this while we are gone," they said to the piper. The jobber noticed that when they were going, every one of the fairies dipped his finger in a box that hung by the door and rubbed his eyes. When the jobber thought that they were off a good distance, he said to himself, "I'm man enough for this piper." With that he began to lace his shoes and prepare for the journey. "What are you doing?" asked the piper. "I'm going to be off out of this," said the jobber. "I think it's long enough that I'm here." "You'll not leave this while I am in it," said the piper. "You heard the order to keep you here till they came back." "Indeed, then, you'll not keep me in. I won't stay with you." With that he rose, and no sooner was he on his feet than the piper caught him, and they were at each other. In the wrestling, the jobber knocked him across a tub that was standing on the floor and broke his back. The piper didn't stir after that. How could he, and his back broken? With that, the jobber sprang to the door, put his finger in the box, and rubbed one eye with his finger in the same way he saw the fairies doing. And when his eye was rubbed, he could see all the fairies in the world with that eye, if they were before him, and not a one could he see with the other eye. He set forward then, spent one night on the road, and as the fair was to be held on the following day, he stopped in a house nor far from the fairground. The day was close and warm, and the jobber was thirsty, so he asked for a drink of water. "You'll get it and welcome," said the woman of the house, "and it isn't water I'd give you to drink, but milk, if I could go for it. But I can't leave the cradle, as something is the matter with the child since yesterday. Neither I nor my husband slept a wink last night from taking care of him, and he's screeching always." "Well," said the jobber, "I'll take care of the cradle while you are after the milk, and sure the child will not die during that time." The woman went for the milk, and the jobber rocked the cradle. He noticed that the screeching was different from the screeching of a child, and caught hold of the blanket to take it from the child's face. But if he did, the child had a firm grip of the clothes, and the jobber had to tear away the blanket. When he had the blanket away, he saw what was in the cradle. And what was it? Sure enough, but Tim the piper. The man and his wife were young people, and the child was their firstborn. "What brought you here, you scoundrel?" asked the jobber. "Oh, when you broke my back," said Tim, "I could do nothing for the good people. They had no further use for me in the fort, so they put me here and took the child of the house with them." "If you are here itself, why can't you hold your tongue and not be destroying the people with your screeching? Sure, this is a good place you are in." "Oh," said the piper, "I wouldn't cry but for the rocking. It's the rocking that's killing me. It was you that broke my back, and don't expose me now." "I'll expose you this minute," said the jobber, "unless you stop quiet." "I'll stop quiet," said the piper. When the woman came back, the child was not crying. "What did you do to quiet him?" she asked. "I only uncovered his face, and I'd said that I'd kill him if he didn't stop quiet, and I suppose the child is in dread, as I am a stranger." "You might as well stay the night with us," said the woman. The jobber agreed, and as the child was quiet, the mother could look to her work. When her husband came home in the evening, she told him that the child had stopped crying since the stranger came, and the husband was glad. "As the child is peaceable," said the jobber to the mother, "I'll take care of him tonight. You can go to bed." The parents went to bed and left the child with their guest. About midnight, the man saw that he was growing sleepy, and he pushed Tim and asked, "Couldn't you play a tune that would keep me awake?" "It would be hard for me to play and my back broken," said Tim. "But if I had the pipes and you propped me in the cradle, I might play." "Where are the pipes?" "My pipes were brought here," said Tim. "They are on the corner of the loft above the fireplace." The jobber rose up, took the pipes, and fitted them together. The piper began to play, and the music was so sweet that it could raise the dead out of the grave. He was not so long playing when the father and mother heard the music, and they had never heard the like of it. "Who is the piper?" asked the man. "I am," said the jobber. "When I am on the road, I play often to amuse myself." Tim threw away the pipes, then stretched back and stopped quiet till morning. The father and mother were glad their child was resting. After breakfast, the father asked the mother, had they good turf? And they said they had. "Bring in 2 or 3 creels of it," he said. She brought the turf, and he put it down on the fire. When the fire was blazing well, the mother was outside. Said the jobber to Tim, "You were a bad host when I met you last, and you'll not be here any longer. I'll burn you now." He went to the door then to call the mother. He wanted her to see what would happen, and not finding her, he came back to the cradle, but found nothing in it except the clothes. Then he got terribly afraid that he would be brought to account for the child. The mother came in and asked, "Where is my child?" He told her everything. He and the woman went to the door and searched for the piper, and what should the woman see outside the door but her own child? She was very glad then. The jobber gave her goodbye and started for the fair. On the way, he felt a great storm of wind and hail coming towards him, and stooped down for shelter under a bush at the side of a ditch. When the storm was passing, he saw that it was a legion of fairies destroying everything before them, tearing up potato stalks and all that stood in their way. "Oh, shame!" cried the jobber, "to be ruining poor people's labor." A slender, foxy, red-haired man, a fairy, turned toward him, and putting a finger into the jobber's eye, took the sight from him. Never again did he see a fairy. When the foxy fairy went back to the host, he asked, "Did ye see the man who was with us in the fort, the man who broke the back of Tim the piper? And did you hear what he said?" "We did not." "Well, I saw him and heard him. I took the sight from him. He'll never see one of us again." The jobber went to the fair, though he had but one eye.
probably thousands of Irish tunes, and the one thing they all have in common is they all have a name. But have you ever wondered how people name tunes? Well, probably one of the most famous flute players in all of Irish traditional music is Vincent Broderick from County Galway. And here's a story he tells about how he named this particular set of tunes. When Vincent and his brother Peter were out on a bike one night, it was a very late evening and they were returning from playing out. And on the way home they heard music. The tune caught their ear, so naturally they stopped and they were attracted to the sound. And they went looking for it, and they came to a large house that was all lit up, and there were people having a ceilidh, dancing, having a grand old time. And they stayed and listened to the music for a while. They watched the goings on, but being a long night, they went home. And the next day, they were pretty curious because it was a well-known road to them that they'd gone down many times. But they could not remember a house like that. So they went back to the spot, and all they could find were ruins. It was a grand house that had gone to decay. So the first jig in this coming set is called The Haunted House, after that memory, and it was probably written by ghosts. The next tune, Vincent named for a trip he took to see some friends and play some music for them. He was told to bring his Sunday clothes, but they didn't tell him what the occasion was. So he was hoping it was going to be a really a party. So on the train, he composed a tune. Unfortunately, when he got there, it was awake. Not knowing the person, he couldn't help but play the tune he had just composed. And a woman came up to him and said, "What are you doing whistling at the wake? Get out of here." So we named the second tune The Whistler at the Wake. And the third jig in this set is called The Old Flail, and he named it after that woman.
to keep an eye out for the fairies.
You will learn that the fairies have a penchant for
Eyes.
the eyeballs.
Yeah, they don't like to be seen.
This is from Irish Fairy Tales, Folklore and Legends, I think edited by Jeffrey Strawn, 1904. The family of Nell Connor had all retired to bed on a wet, stormy December night when a loud knocking at the door and a strange, shrill voice demanding the midwife's attendance on a sick woman aroused the inmates from their slumber. The rain pattered against the single pane that formed the only window of the apartment, and the wind whistled mournfully through the clinks of its mud wall. Nell, ever faithful to the duties of the profession, rose unreluctantly, flung her mantle of frieze on her shoulders, and opened the door. "'Tis a fearful, wild night to venture abroad in," said she, accosting a tall, dark-looking man mounted on a fine gray horse. "But it's strange, acushla, I don't know ye. Have we far to go?" "Not far," said the man in a tone that chilled the midwife's soul. He caught her hand, and Nell felt herself raised as light as a feather onto the pillion behind him. They shot along with the lightning's rapidity, and though a pitchy darkness enveloped earth and heaven, the gray horse moved with sure and easy speed. After passing many a hollow dell and rising moorland, during which no sound betrayed the tramp of the horse's hoofs, they came to the bank of the swollen, rapid Aragon. The roaring rush of the muddy river, the blue gleam of the lightning flashing over its troubled wave, and the fitful moaning of its savage blast struck terror into the midwife's heart. "God and the Blessed Virgin preserve me," she exclaimed in paroxysm of terror, and the hollow cliffs that part the dashing waters reverberated the sounds. "Utter those names again and abide the consequence," said the mysterious horseman angrily. Then plunging into the wild stream, "Be silent," he continued, "and fear nothing though sailing in a turf dish on the wide sea." Gaining the opposite bank, they rowed in the same rapid rate with which they first set forward, till they reached the fort of Doom, which Nell well recognized as the rising moon flung her pale, melancholy light athwart the horizon. Alighting from his horse, the tall, dark man struck the ground thrice with his foot, whereupon there appeared a long flight of steps that led into the bosom of the earth. He instantly descended and called upon his terrified companion to follow him. They entered a winding passage that led into a lofty hall illuminated with burning tapers. The tables groaned beneath the splendid feast. The earthly trilling of the melting harp stole softly on the ear, while a circle of lovely ladies and polished gentlemen flew through all the mazes of a dance. These were the prominent sights that caught Nell's attention as her conductor led her hastily through the hall to an inner chamber where lay the lady whom she was called upon to assist. After Nell had announced the birth of a fine boy, the tall, dark man, who still remained in the room, gave her a vessel containing a greenish ointment, with which he ordered her to anoint the newborn babe from head to foot, but he cautioned her to suffer none of it to touch any part of her except the hand that performed the operation. When the unction was concluded and the child dressed and laid in the superb cradle, Nell Connor, feeling a certain twitching sensation in her right eye, instinctively clapped her hand to that organ, when she perceived the objects in the chamber suddenly undergo a strange metamorphosis and assume an indefinable twofold appearance in which the true and the unreal blended together in an indescribable way. She rightly considered that this arose from the virtue of the ointment, which gave her right eye the power of seeing things in this strange dwelling in their proper shape. Upon closing her left eye, all delusion vanished. The beautiful lady appeared a withered hag, the lovely boy a shapeless cross-grained squalor, and the all-mysterious horseman was suddenly changed into a little red-haired chap of 3 feet high, wearing a conical cap, his deformed, skinny mouth extending from ear to ear, and his restless, piercing eyes seemed to search the midwife's soul whenever she met their malignant glance. "Nell Connor," said the little red-haired man, "I feel obliged by your civility, and here is trifle for your trouble." So saying, he put into her hand what seemed to her left eye to be 2 bright pieces of gold, but which the right one detected as 2 ivy leaves clipped all around the edges. In passing out of the place, the hall and its guests appeared sadly altered. The polished gentlemen and the lovely ladies were short, red-capped fellows in deformed beldames, and the bright tapers were twinkling rushlights. Upon emerging into the moonlight, the gallant gray that traveled so fleetly to doom proved nothing more than the beam of an old plow which had lain since the preceding spring across the stone gap at the corner of Nell's cabin. Quaking with terror, she mounted behind her conductor. The beam performed its part to admiration, outstripped the wind, recrossed the roaring Araglin, and after some hard cantering over marsh and moorland, set Nell Connor down, pretty much to her satisfaction, at her own door, as the March cock upon the roost within proclaimed the approach of the tardy day. Now Mill Street Fair happened on the next day, and Nell Connor, having business there, was surprised on entering the town to see her little red-haired acquaintance busily employed in selecting and carrying off the choicest cows and substituting in their stead clods or stones or other inanimate things which in the strict resemblance they were made to bear to the animals thus abstracted. Deceived every mortal's eye but Nell's. She attentively watched his progress during the afternoon. At length she entered a crowded tent, where sat a fine-looking country girl and her sweetheart, refreshing themselves with cake and a glass of punch. The busy purloiner of the cows approached the maiden, and thrusting a switch up her nostril, caused her to sneeze 3 successive times. He grinned horribly at the first and second sneeze, but at the third, when Nell Connor exclaimed, "Christ and the Blessed Virgin between you and the evil one, Macaulay Bon," the disappointed fairy gnashed his teeth in fury. His malignant eyes beamed with rage, and darting like a lightning's flash through the guests of the crowded tent to the spot where Nell Connor stood, and striking out her right eye with the point of his switch, he immediately disappeared.
Fairies are not nice.
They're mean little.
They're mean.
Tinkerbell is not the kind of fairy
No,
we're
there's
talking
no
about.
Tinkerbells in this show. This is a legend, another Irish legend I came upon as we were preparing for the show. And it's about Fair Gorta, or in Ireland he's known as the Hungry Man. But he's not a man, he's a fairy. And he's known to rise during hard times. And there are many, many stories of him, especially during the days of the potato famine back in the black 1840s. The old tales describe him as a walking skeleton with a gaunt and very haggard face, hollow cheeks, angular bones that some stick out, and he's covered with decaying skin. He has clothes, but it's really more like he's covered in rags. You've all seen the zombies. He kind of looks like that. He is a fairy, but unlike other fairies, he's a loner. He has no masters. There's no protections from his power. Decimation, despair awaken him, so he comes from the hard times, and his withered skeletal finger will rise up from the hungry ground and point to his next prey. He's known to wander, begging for food. If he's treated kindly, he could bestow good blessings, maybe even wealth. But you don't have anything to offer him, you probably will feel his wrath, and many suffered poverty, famine, and even death after encountering him. There's no surefire way to defend yourself against him, but legend goes there are some things you can try, and the most common one from the old tales is to carry a crust of bread in your pocket to protect you from his curse. So I mean, that story deserves a song. So I made this one up about old Fair Gorda. Beware, Fair Gorta, the old stories will tell. Don't walk alone by night, he'll drag you to hell. He roams the country, searching for bread. If you've none to give him, you may wind up dead. Fair Gorta, would say the old hags, a dried up old skeleton, covered in rags. He's the power to starve you or take you away, to spare your soul with gratuitous pay. There once was a lad, his life was undone at the hand of Fair Gorta at the setting of the sun. He met that devil on a dark dreary road, bearing no protection, goes the story untold. If the foolish lad listened to what the hag said, he might have been spared if he'd carried some bread. But with nothing to offer, he fell to his knee and begged Fair Gorta to let him go free. I'll spare your life, Fair Gorta said, but cursed you will be till the day you are dead. You never will have a true loving wife. Hunger and sorrow you'll know your whole life. Beware, Fair Gorta, the old stories will tell. Don't walk alone at night, he will drag you to hell. He roams the country, searching for bread. If you've none to give him, you might wind up dead.
Our next story is The Banshee Cries for the Boils.
You probably heard the word banshee. Banshee is actually two Irish words. Ban is woman and she is fairy. So when you hear banshee, that's what it means. I saw the banshee when old Boyle's mother died. I was coming home in the dusk with a load of sods and the old gray horse and me mother with me. And says she to me, some poor woman has lost her man or maybe a son. And the thing wore a shroud as if it had come from a coffin, and its hair was streaming in the wind. We both saw it. And me mother, she said a prayer or maybe two. That's the banshee, says she. Aye. He cried for many an old family here, and some say it is one that had gone before. Be that as it may, no human heart could utter such grief. So mind ye, I doubt it.
final story, the coffin maker has some old friends for dinner. Daniel Crowley and the Ghosts. These were first published in 1895, collected by Jeremiah Curtin. There lived a man in Cork whose name was Daniel Crowley. He was a coffin maker by trade and had a deal of coffins laid by, so that his apprentice might sell them when himself was not at home. A messenger came to Daniel Crowley's shop one day and told him there was a man dead at the end of town and to send up a coffin for him, or to make one. Daniel took down a coffin, put in a donkey cart, drove to the wake house, went in and told the people of the house that the coffin was there for them. The corpse was laid out on the table in the next room, the kitchen. 5 or 6 women were keeping watch around it. Many people were in the kitchen. Daniel Crowley was asked to sit down and commence to shorten the night. That is, to tell some stories and amuse himself and others. A tumbler of punch was brought, and he promised to do the best he could. He began to tell stories and shorten the night. A second glass of punch was brought to him, and he went on telling tales. There was a man at the wake who sang a song. After, another was found, and then another. Then the people asked Daniel Crowley to sing, and he did. The song he sang was of another nation. He sang about the good people, the fairies. The song pleased the company. They desired him to sing again, and he did not refuse. As I was a-walking down by the loch, as I was a-walking one morning of late, who should I spy but my own dear comrade, wrapped up in flannel, so hard was his fate. I boldly stepped up to, and kindly did ask him, why are you wrapped in flannel so white? Well, my body is injured and sadly disordered, all by a young woman, my own heart's delight. Oh, had she but told me when she disordered me, had she but told me of it at the time, well, I might have got salts or pills of white mercury. And now I'm cut down in the height of my prime. Get 6 pretty maidens to carry my coffin, 6 pretty maidens to bear up my pall, and give to each of them bunches of roses, that they may not smell me as they go along. The people who were Daniel Crowley pleased the company so much with his 2 songs that a woman who had 3 daughters wanted to make a match for one of them and get Daniel Crowley as a husband for her. Crowley was a bachelor, well on in years, and had never thought of marrying. The mother spoke of the match to the woman sitting next to her. The woman shook her head, but the mother said, "If he takes one of my daughters, I'll be glad, for he has money laid by. Do you go and speak to him, but say nothing to me at first." The woman went to Daniel and told him that she had a fine, beautiful girl in view, and that now was his time to get a beautiful wife. He'd never have such a chance again. Crowley rose up in great anger. "There isn't a woman wearing clothes that I would marry," he said. "There isn't a woman born that could bring me to make 2 halves of my loaf for her." The woman was insulted now and forgot herself. She began to abuse Crowley. "Bad luck to you, you hairy little scoundrel," she said. "You might be a grandfather to my child. You're not fit to clean the shoes on her feet. You have only dead people for company day and night. 'Tis by them you make your living." "Oh, then," says Daniel Crowley, "I'd prefer the dead to the living any day if they all were like you. Besides, I have nothing against the dead. I'm getting employment from them and not from the living. For 'tis the dead that want my coffins." "Bad luck to you. 'Tis with the dead you ought to be and not with the living. 'Twould be fitter for you to go out of this altogether and be with your dead people." "I'd go if I knew how to get to them." "Why not invite them to supper then?" retorted the woman. He rose up then, went out and called men, women, children, soldiers, sailors, all people that I had ever made coffins for. "I invite you to my house tonight, and I'll spend what I need in giving a feast." The people who were watching the dead man on the table saw him smile when he heard the invitation. They ran out of the room in fright and out of the kitchen, and Daniel Crowley hurried away to his shop as fast as ever his donkey cart could carry him. On the way, he came to a public house and, going in, bought a pint bottle of whiskey, put it in his pocket, and drove on. The workshop was locked and the shutters down when he left that evening, but when he came near, he saw that all the windows were shining with light, and he was in dread that the building was burning or that robbers were in it. When right there, Crowley slipped into a corner of the building opposite to know, could he see what was happening? And soon he saw crowds of men, women, and children walking right toward his shop and going in, but none coming out. Daniel was hiding some time when a man tapped him on the shoulder and asked, "Is it here you are and we waiting for you? 'Tis a shame to treat company this way. Come now." Crowley went with the man to the shop, and as he passed the threshold, he saw a great gathering of people. Some were neighbors, people he had known in the past. All were dancing, singing, amusing themselves. He was not long looking on when a man came to him and said, "You seem not to know me, Daniel Crowley." "Well, I don't know you," said Crowley. "How could I?" "You might then, and you ought to know me, for I am the first man you made a coffin for, and 'twas I gave you your first start in business." Soon another man came up, a lame man. "Do you know me, Daniel Crowley?" "I do not." "Well, I'm your cousin, and it isn't long since I died." "Oh, now I know you well, for you're lame. In God's name," said Crowley to his cousin, How am I to get these people out of this? What time is it?" "'Tis early, hardly 11 o'clock, man." Crowley wondered that it was so early. "Receive them kindly," said the cousin. "Make merriment as you can." "I have no money with me to get food or drink. 'Tis night now and all the places are closed," answered Crowley. "Just do the best you can," said the cousin. The best dancer they had was a piper by the name of John Reardon, from the city of Cork. The fiddler was one John Healy. Healy brought no fiddle with him, but he made one. And the way he made it was to take off what flesh he had on his body. He rubbed up and down on his own ribs, each one having a different note, and he made the loveliest music that Daniel Crowley had ever heard. After that, the whole company followed his example. All threw off what flesh they had on them and began to dance jigs and hornpipes in their bare bones. plucked up all the courage to know could he live through the night. But still he thought daylight would never come. There was one man, John Sullivan, that he noticed especially. The man had married twice in his life, and with him came the two women. Crowley saw him taking out the second wife to dance a breakdown, and the two danced so well that the company was delighted. All the skeletons had their mouth open and laughing. He danced and knocked so much merriment out of them all that his first wife, who was at the end of the house, became jealous and mad altogether. She ran down to where he was and told him she had a better right to dance with him than the second wife. "That's not the truth for you," said the second wife. "When he married me, you were a dead woman and he was free. And I'm a better dancer than you are, and I will dance with him whether you like it or not." "Hold your tongue," screamed the first wife. "Sure, you couldn't come to this feast tonight at all, but for the loan of another woman's shin bones." Sullivan looked at his two wives and asked the second one, "Isn't it your own shin bones you have?" "No, they're borrowed. I borrowed the neighbor woman's shins from her, and 'tis those I have with me tonight." "Well, who's the owner of the shin bones you have under you?" asked the husband. "They belonged to one Catherine Murray. She hadn't a very good name in life." "But why didn't you come on your own feet?" "Oh, I wasn't good myself in life, and I was put under a penalty. And the penalty is that whenever there is a feast or ball, and I cannot go to it unless I am able to borrow a pair of shins." Sullivan was raging when he found out that the shin bones he had been dancing with were the shin bones that he had been dancing with belonged to a third woman, and she not the best. And he gave a slap to the wife that sent her spinning into the corner. Now, the woman had relations among the skeletons present, and they were none too happy when they saw the man strike their friend. "We'll never let that go with him," said they. "We must knock satisfaction out of Sullivan." The woman's friends rose up, and as there were no clubs or weapons, they pulled off their left arms and began to slash and strike with them in a terrible fashion. There was an awful battle in 1 minute. Crowley was standing below at the end of the room, cold and hungry, not knowing but he'd be killed. As Sullivan was trying to dodge the blows sent against him, he got as far as Daniel Crowley and stepped on his toe without knowing it. Crowley got vexed and gave Sullivan a blow with his fist that drove the head from him and sent it flying across the room. When Sullivan saw the head flying off from the blow, he ran and catching it, aimed a blow at Daniel Crowley with the head, and aimed so truly that he knocked him under the bench. Then, having him at a disadvantage, he squeezed his throat and held him so firmly between the bench and the floor, and the man lost his senses and couldn't remember a thing more. to himself in the morning, his apprentice found him stretched under the bench with an empty bottle under his arm. He was bruised and pounded, his throat was sore where Sullivan had squeezed it. He didn't know how the company broke up, nor when the guests went away. So thank you for coming, and I hope you guys have a nice, quiet ride home.